The Norse people, or as they're more commonly referred to as the Vikings, made a series of raids on England in the late 8th century before eventually colonising the country and occupying the land until their demise in 1066 at the Battle of Stamford Bridge. The Norse settlers built a series of primitive designs for their houses, none of which were particularly pretty, and were often made out of wood, mud, and turf. One of their most famous designs is known as the Longhouse, which is what we will be making today. They are thought to have been long windowless houses with a single main hall where an entire family would live. What I will be making is a slightly more attractive interpretation of this famous building, but will be attempting to keep its roots and design philosophy as much as possible. And I will talk a little bit about how the Norse settlers lived and occupied these houses. So let's get straight into it. Here's the stretch of coastline where we're going to be making our new Longhouse. So I've got plenty of space, making sure I've got quite a large area. This is not a small project and it took me nearly an hour and a half to complete the whole thing. So even though it looks kind of small, it will end up being quite a long build. So the first thing that we need to do is lay some foundation plans, which is mainly going to be a bunch of pillars for the time being. Take note to where I am placing my logs, but hold on a second as it does get extremely confusing when there's a lot of them. I'm making an ovular shape, however, I managed to mess up just one block, and what you're about to witness is me being ultimately confused for about 10 minutes trying to work out where I had messed up. And it's actually quite funny to watch, which is why I decided to keep it in the video. Look at me, like, where did it go? Where is it? Where have I messed up? This goes here. Look, this goes here. And then I worked it out. So this is exactly the plan that it needs to be. This is the complete setup for the foundation. If you're not following this block for block, all you need is an inner circle and an outer circle. The inner circle will have walls, the outer circle made up will just be pillars. So once you've got something like this, or exactly this, what we then need to do is raise up the outside pillar circle to 3 blocks high each. And then once we've done that, we then need to go and raise up the inner circle, all of the pillars, to a total height of 8 blocks. This is going to be the foundation of what we're working with. Once you've got all these pillars in place, and make sure that they are in the right place. There are no mess ups, not even one block out of place, or it's going to confuse you later on. Making sure this is perfect, it will be a lot easier to work with from here. What we're going to do now is use dark oak and just decorate the sides by putting a block right next to each pillar either side, and then fill in the rest with spruce all the way to the top. This is going to mark where the actual Longhouse is. And you may have noticed that there isn't a door yet. Well, that's completely normal because we want to make sure that these pillars and the walls are in the correct position first, before we then go to this long side and mark out where our door is going to be, and I made it facing the ocean for a reason that we'll get to later on. The pillars we can then start connecting up with some spruce staircase to start making a shelter that makes its way all the way round the Longhouse, as was seen in the images that I showed you at the start of the video. Now you may see myself here going backwards and forwards, looking at what I made. That's because I just wanted the spruce staircase to be all the same as you went around so that it was fairly consistent. Although, to be honest with you, a mistake at this point probably would go unnoticed. I was just being extra careful. After doing 2 different layers of spruce staircase, as you can see, there's a bit of a gap which we just fill in with spruce slabs. Once we've done that, we've then created this little bit of shelter that makes its way all the way around the Longhouse, which was used typically to store things and to work when there was rain, which happened quite a lot in England. So once we've done that, we then need to work on the top half. I'm going to be laying some more dark oak in between the pillars for a bit of detail. Obviously, the Viking houses would have been all the same colour, just using wood, because they weren't making houses to be particularly pleasing to the eye, they were just making them to live in. Now we need to start gradually working on the roof, and to do this you'll see that I've started marking where some of the pillars are going to jut out, and in the centre I've even raised it up 2 blocks. This is going to indicate where our structures are going to meet at the top. So on the overhang here, we're going to be creating a dark oak staircase roof that will act as the support beams, and it's got that very iconic cross shape that Viking houses typically have, both in the fantasy depictions and in real life. The next dark oak structure needs to go on the next set of beams, which is why it was so important to get that framework correct at the start. This one will be slightly bigger because it's a wider framework. We're going to then connect these 2 up with a very odd looking roof style that I don't think I've ever used before on this channel. It took me a long time to figure out what an appropriate roof for this Viking house would be, and eventually came to the conclusion that acacia log was going to be my block. Now this is odd because it's orange at the top, but all we want to see is that grey style bark on the sides and nothing else, so we'll cover up the orange using grey carpet. This may look odd, but it actually works really well. If you can't get your hands on any acacia logs, then I recommend just using something like cobble or stone brick. It might not be quite as authentic, not being wood, but it works all the same. So here's a quick top-down view for anybody that's following this tutorial block for block, which of course I don't encourage you to do. I'd rather that you take what I teach you and make your own build out of it. So let's continue the roof. On this centerpiece, I have made an archway over the top, which is more of an artistic interpretation than it is historically accurate, but I wanted to really give some shape to this build. On the right hand side of the build, we're mimicking exactly the same as we did on the left hand side with these beams made of dark oak wood. Once we've got those, we then need to start filling in the rest of the roof and this bit of wall that has sprung up from the archway. So we now need to go back to our odd looking roof of acacia wood and grey carpet to cover up the orange bits. I'm taking it nice and slow so that anybody that is following block for block will be able to make the correct shape here. What's important is to leave a square in the center of the build entirely. That's because there's a very important feature of Viking houses, how they didn't have chimneys, so they often just left a hole directly above for smoke to leave the house. So I thought I would leave that in as a design feature of the house. So we need to replicate everything we've done on one side to the other. This is one of those builds where if you can successfully make 1/4 or 1/2 of the build, you can replicate it over block for block and get exactly the same build out of it. So that's what I might recommend if you are struggling with working on the whole thing at once. Just make half or even 1/4 and you can just copy it and make it all work together. So as you can see, once the roof is all filled in, we can actually start to see all of this come together. But you'll see that our entrance is still lacking. That's where we're going to add some more dark oak supports over the top in a nice crisscross shape again, as iconic Viking construction usually is, and add some shields on the building. Now there's no historical proof to say that they put shields on their buildings. I've just done this because I thought it was a really nice touch using iron trapdoors and stained clay with some buttons on to mimic a shield design. On the top where the roof is, where we left that hole, we're just going to create another little structure to protect it from the rain, and there we have our complete external structure for the Longhouse, and it looks pretty good. It might not be entirely historically accurate, but I wanted to add a bit of shape and a bit of detail to make it look a bit nicer. But we're not finished yet. There's still some interior to take care of, and this I did want to be a little bit more accurate. It's comprised of a single hall, and in the middle they would have a fireplace where they would often gather for cooking and to keep warm in the winter months. There, the smoke would literally leave straight out of the top, so it would get very smoky in the house. There wasn't any sort of control. They often had benches on the side of their buildings. That's where they would sleep and sit and whatever else. There was absolutely no privacy in these longhouses. At one end, they'd even have a place to keep animals in the winter, so it'd also be pretty smelly. With all those animals in there and they poop and stuff, it's gonna get pretty messy, noisy, but at least they will be warm and survive in the winter. So, as you can see, the interior is fairly simple, and I just did this to be more historically accurate than appealing. If you're making this in Minecraft, you probably want to make this a little more Minecraft friendly. However, it oddly works. There's the cauldron in the middle, there's the place to put your animals, and there's a crafting area, etc. You could put your bed in the right place. But as you can see, in these houses, it would have been incredibly cozy, it would have been smelly, it would have been close quarters, no privacy. So you had to be a pretty tight-knit family to be living in these houses, and I'm sure there were plenty of Viking arguments going on throughout the days that they lived in the UK. So, from the outside you can see that it's all complete now, except it's not complete without a longboat. The Vikings were famous for travelling across the sea and raiding England for loot. And they did this by constructing very long, iconic boats with dragon heads at the end. So I'm going to make a very quick one now to complete this build and tie it all in together. I started off with just a single block of spruce wood that went all the way along. Now, I made a pretty stubby looking longboat. In fact, I'm going to extend this out either side. If I were going to make this again, I'd make it at least 4 blocks longer, even after I've extended it out. It's actually fairly easy to make a longboat, at least the boat here, because the head is fairly easy to make and the little tail. Just using some staircases and some slabs in the right places, you can really make a pretty good looking boat that works with your longhouse. The difficult bit comes in making the sail. Making sails in Minecraft is not easy. A lot of people tend to make one that's very, very flat. But to make one that's curved and works really well, you need to make sure that there's plenty of height and also lots and lots of shape. It took me a good 10 minutes of revision of mixing it and putting it back and, you know, changing here and there to try and get a shape that bows all the way around before I was happy with it. So something like that sitting in the dock is a perfect addition and final point for this video. There we have it, our longhouse, a typical Viking house, or at least my artistic interpretation of a Viking house. And hopefully from this video did you not only learn how to make one of these or make a similar house, but you also learned a little bit about Viking longhouses, which is actually in the United Kingdom curriculum because we learn about this in our history lessons. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, everybody, and if you'd like more historical buildings and a little bit of history thrown in there as well, please let me know down below. And if you make one of these, don't forget to tweet a picture of it to me at GrianMC on Twitter. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. Goodbye. Also, did you like the shaders or not? I don't know. Bye.